Hi everybody, welcome to Zeal Zaddy. I'm Scott, my pronouns are he, him, and this is Story Talk, where every picture tells a story. So tonight we're going to be talking about what it means to be a professional DM or GM. Pedantically, it means you get paid, but I think it goes a little deeper than that, especially in an industry filled with rules lawyers, min-maxers, chaos goblins, professional actors, amateur actors, improv artists. It is a crazy industry we're in, but somebody has to take the reins when big games are coming up. So what does it mean? What does it take to become a pro? What makes a perfect table for a pro? What makes a pro perfect for a table? Is it a deep understanding of the rules? I'm going to assume that there's some understanding of the rules. Perhaps it's extraordinary world building. Maybe it's bringing cosplay or improv to the party. Or they do it all. Well, let's talk to some real DMs who are pros and get to the bottom of it. If you have questions, type question in the chat. It'll make it easier for me to find. And let's get going. All right, we have three amazing DMs with us tonight. We have Anya, Morgan, and Salim. I'm going to let them go around and say who they are, where they can be found, and where you can potentially hire them. So let's start. We'll stop at the top and go around, go clockwise. So let's start with you, Anya.
Okay, hi everyone. I am Anya. My pronouns are she, her. I am Lionne cosplay literally everywhere except for Start Playing, where I am simply Lionne because I do not cosplay when I am pro GMing.
All right, Morgan.
What's up, travelers? I'm Morgan of Mindflayed Mondays. My pronouns are he, him. You can find me on all the socials except Twitter at Mindflayed Mondays. On Twitter is just Mindflayed Mon. As I was telling these wonderful people earlier, apparently my name was too long for Twitter, so I'm the founder of mindflayedmondays.com. It is a website where you can hire myself or one of my team members to run games for you, either online or in person in South Florida. So that's where you can find us at. So,
All right, and Salim.
Hello, my name is Salim Makima. My socials online are Jangowolf. That's my favorite handle. On Start Playing, it's probably going to be my real name, Salim Makima. But other than that, it's going to be Jangowolf pretty much everywhere else.
Awesome. All right, well, remember, if you have any questions, just put question in front of it. It makes it easier for me to find in chat. I'm going to get started because I have so many questions tonight. I have double the number of questions we could possibly answer in one night. But I'm going to start with the one everyone probably wants to know. How well do you need to know the rules of the game that you're going to run?
I think it depends on the game, personally. The more complex the rules, really the more you need to know.
Yeah. So go ahead.
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I usually run more complex system like Warhammer 40K. So I had to put together a quick start guide to quickly onboard players and teach them how to play, while I also learned all the complex areas of the rules and had a quick reference sheets for them. So how well? Pretty well. You need to know the rules pretty well and then be able to find the book very quickly. That's my answer.
Yeah. I would say it's definitely part of that. You got to know the rules well enough, at least. I think, was it somebody put well-ish?
Right?
Yeah.
Well-ish.
That's my mod.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I mostly do Dungeons and Dragons, and I was telling you guys, I've been playing since I was 5, so I know every edition, which makes it a lot easier for me to run that since I know it so well. But I'll tell you, even with all the years, I don't know everything. And if you're expecting your pro DM to know every rule in the book, don't, because we're going to have to look at it at some point. But we generally have a good understanding, or can operate on the fly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
When I am running games, I end up, especially for D&D, I end up having 20 extra tabs of things that I've looked up just to make sure. But you see that in actual plays all the time with the DM like rifling through the pages, double checking a rule. So
I mean, that's what
like
the DM
it's
screen
not
does too.
Yeah, exactly. It's not uncommon.
I recently watched a thing on TikTok. I think it was from Jenny. She was talking about her time at the castle, the D&D in the castle.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Jeremy Crawford was running a game for her and a bunch of them, and even he had to look at the rules. So I mean, if Jeremy Crawford's looking at the rules, I think it's okay for the rest of us.
So
yeah, well, just one other thing, and then you compare that to something like Monster of the Week, which is one of the games that I run the most, and really any Powered by the Apocalypse game, like Glitter Hearts and Impulse Drive, things like that. The rules are a little bit more flexible and it's much more story driven, and so it doesn't require you to know quite so many rules.
Yeah.
Like I oftentimes I don't even look at the keeper moves PDF because I don't need it. I just go with the flow of what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said in the beginning, it really depends on the system. Like Powered by the Apocalypse, and like the Forge in the Dark games, you can get away with not knowing every rule or even need to know a lot of it. As long as you know just the basics, you're good.
Yeah.
I think with those kind of games, it comes down more to how good you are narratively. How good you are able to work on the fly. You know, if you can do that, then you're good in those kind of systems.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So in that case, if you're trying to run like Forge in the Dark, I think I actually didn't play that one. I played Wicked Ones, which is Forge in the Dark system where you play monsters. So for that,
nice.
You want to do some practice runs of like reading material where you're playing monsters or stories about monsters. That way on the fly, you can quickly, drive into that stuff.
When this is over, I need to get that game name from you so I can look it up and find that one, because I love the Forged in the Dark system games. So,
Wicked Ones is pretty much Forged in the Dark, but you're building a dungeon. You're all playing all sorts of the typical monsters, and you can also make your own monsters. So
nice.
That's a quick pitch thing for you, and I'll write it down for you in chat.
So, what do you think your role is as a professional DM versus just DMing for your friends?
Entertainment.
There is a difference. I think. Do one of you guys want to answer first? I don't want to just overstep.
Well, I can kind of compare it. I haven't run home games in a really long time, honestly. I'm either in or running games on stream, or I am being a pro GM. And this past Saturday, I did actually run a home game for my spouse and my sister and her boyfriend. And it was a very different vibe because it was very relaxed. Like we would keep dropping out of character and talk about something random from the hometown and doing other random things. Because I set the game, it was Monster of the Week. I set the game in our hometown because we're from West Virginia, so cryptids galore.
Yeah, I was gonna say, for me, like when I ran games, because I'm kind of like you, I don't really run them so much anymore at home just for fun. Because when I remember doing that, it's always somebody, everybody's going to be there, and then last minute, like the typical joke that goes online, where like, oh, we canceled, we can't make it, and it's always last minute, or the one guy that nobody can get a hold of. With the pro DMing, it's one of the things I love the most. For me, it's not even necessarily it's not about the money. It's really not. I love it because there's just so much more structure, and everybody is more responsible about the time they're putting into it, because not only are they putting their time, but they are putting their money into it. And automatically, when you're putting your money into something, your attention's more into it, you're more present, and you're more likely to show up. And that's a big difference than running for just, some friends who are going to probably bail last minute. And I think so because of that, when I run pro games, I feel like I have to go the extra mile. Like if I was just playing for my dad or my brothers, it would just be whatever. But when I'm running for clients, I'm like researching like 10 times more than I would ever do, coming up with the coolest stuff that I can try to throw at them. And I think that's the biggest difference between running, is the time that we put into it as players and GMs.
Yeah. Pretty much just like what Morgan said, except for I kind of go with a bit more of a casual approach as well, as I try to help players like meet other people, A lot of them end up being a little shy, and I also try to help them learn the system, since some of them might be coming in new or just trying out the system because their group doesn't want to jump into this just yet. So he's playing it by himself just so he can figure out how to convince him how to do it. And then, like you said, the professional level, entertaining them and them going, hey, I'm giving you money, therefore I want to show up for this. That really does help the game actually happen. It
does. It 100% does. And like you were saying, that is the other thing, difference with pro DMing. Like, I might help my friends when they're sitting down and playing, but if I'm doing for a client, I'm definitely giving them like extra attention, making sure they understand everything.
Oh, yeah.
If they have questions, I'm answering it. I want them to not just enjoy the game, but understand it to the best that they can. And and especially when you're, like you said, when people are new trying to come into this and you give them that kind of attention, it really opens up to them, to the community in a good way. Because there's all these horror stories about like my first time playing and then my dungeon master was just atrocious. And you're just like, okay, I don't ever want my players ever feeling that way. So
yeah, definitely. And like for me, one of those major things is making sure that everyone has a voice at the table, because I've done this from the very beginning, which makes me very happy. In my very first pro GM game back in October, end of October, I had one player who was extremely quiet, and I could tell that it was just that she wasn't fully comfortable at the table yet. And not that she hadn't played a ton before, because she had, but I would always make a point to call out to her, make sure that everything was like she got to do what her character wanted to do, all of that. She's now in 2 campaigns with me every Sunday. So I did something right.
That's awesome. I mean, and that's the difference. It really is. It makes a difference. And that's like, I think the biggest thing for us as pro DMs is, because we get a lot of heat from people who don't really understand it.
Absolutely.
Why
would people pay for that?
Yeah, but I feel like at least most of the pro DMs I've met and the ones I work with, and from what I can tell from both of you, we care a lot.
Yeah.
And we want the welcoming of the community to be the best we can. So
definitely.
I don't know. That's kind of my feel on it.
Yeah, I'm. This may not be obvious, but I'm actually super shy sometimes. So only when I GM, it actually flips, and I go, well, I know I have to be in charge, or when I'm on a film set or doing video game stuff, and then I go, well, time to be in charge. But much like you said, Anya, oftentimes when I was doing normal GM stuff, there will always be the shy person or the person who thinks that he doesn't really have a good idea. So I had to encourage them to tell me the idea, then I'll sort of translate it and then make it work for you. And that wasn't even for stuff I was getting paid for. So it's just that I love GMing, want everyone to have fun at the table. That's what we do as GMs.
So what inspired you to go pro? Well, I mean, what was, and there had to be something. Nobody just goes, I'm going to start charging for this.
I think for me, it was just seeing people posting about Start Playing on Twitter. I will continue to call it Twitter. It is Twitter. Yes, anyway.
Agreed.
But I kept seeing people posting about being a pro GM and all of that. And I was just like, well, I've been GMing for the last 4 years. I could give it a try. And I absolutely took my anxiety medication before that first game. It was the most nerve-wracking thing. I didn't tell them it was my first time doing a pro GM game, and at the end of it, I did. And one of them was like the forever GM. He was like this wizened old grandpa, and he just said, this was my birthday present to myself because I never get to play games, and it was wonderful.
Oh, that's
I love
cool.
that.
It was so great.
It's so nice.
Yeah.
It's so wholesome.
Right.
Salim,
so that was me.
How do I get into GMing, pro GMing? Well, I think it's kind of like a bittersweet story. So I started really GMing back when COVID happened because my Cyberpunk GM, who was really awesome, I think he was like a health worker or something. So he was constantly getting more and more tired. So I said, I'll take over GMing for you for a little bit. I'll just do a bunch of random stuff. Since I didn't really know how to run Cyberpunk, I was like, I'm going to go run stuff that's easy, like Star Wars 5e, and then I did Witcher, and I did Witcher 5e. So after those games, I was like, well, I'm actually pretty good at GMing, even though I had a lot of stuff to go through, a lot of problems, but I still like really enjoyed it. And like one of the main issues, I was like, well, I don't have enough money to buy all these random books. So I decided to become a paid GM so I could buy more rule books and supplements and whatnot.
You had to become a pro GM to afford your habit.
That's kind of like what mine was. Mine, was it? This is before COVID. I don't know. How long have I been doing this, Scott? I mean, I met you towards the beginning when I did it because we're both in South Florida. I want to say like what, three years?
It was right before the pandemic, so 2019, I guess.
Yeah, 2019 was before the pandemic.
And I remember I read an article because I've been playing forever, like all kinds of systems, and I love playing. And my wife she doesn't mind me playing, but she's like, "Oh, you just play all these games," and I was like, well, I really love doing this stuff. And then I saw this article about pro DMs. I was like, what? I was like, well, no. So I told him, I said, what if, told my wife, I said, what if I was to charge for this? Well, if you're making money, then I don't care if you're running games. I'm like, all right, cool. So that way I could afford the books. I sold all my 3.5 edition books. I had like 50 books.
Oh,
I went and sold them online because I was like, there's no way I have enough room for everything in here. And I was like, and 5e's coming out, I'm going to go right into 5e. So I sold everything, bought everything digitally. I love real books, but I was like, digital's easier. Plus with the D&D Beyond, I can get my players, easier access to the stuff, easier for me to manage the campaigns. And that's just kind of where I went right off the bat. And it was just took off and done all right for myself. But I love it. And again, it was mainly to pay for my habit. and so my wife would let me play because I was playing too much.
Oh my goodness. I love that.
I'm like, babe, they paid for it. I have to go run the game.
Yeah. No, that's kind of like me with my spouse, because at the beginning he was just like, oh, well, this is cutting into our time. I was like, but I'm getting paid for it. And then I started running a hell of a lot more games, like every 3 to 6 games every week, sometimes more. Oof. And then he was just like, oh, okay, you can, yeah, this is great. Just tell me when you're free to hang out.
Wow. We did get a question in chat that I want to bring up, and Django started answering it already, but do you start with session 0, and is it different as a paid DM for players than you would use if it was just friends or something?
The comparison I have is so pro GMing versus streaming games, because I never for home games I never did session 0s because it wasn't really a thing when we started out.
Yeah, it wasn't.
And so with my session 0s for streamed games, it's always a couple of weeks before the actual stream, and we spend an hour going over lines and veils and talking about what the game is going to be that's run, and making sure that everything is good for everyone, because we're performing for an audience, but we also need to be safe as well. Versus the I do a lot of one shots. I do so many one shots, and then I have 3 campaigns going right now, and so my session 0s are very, very truncated, maybe 10-15 minutes at the very beginning of the session. I combine all of the answers to my consent and gaming form, and then I just have a screenshot. I go through the list and I tell them, it's always available. I also run my games on RollVTT, playroll.com. And they have this ping that's like an X card, basically, that you can click and it's anonymous. No one's ever had to use it. Everyone who uses it accidentally and goes, oops, sorry, I didn't know what that was. It's a giant red exclamation mark, but, but that's me.
All right. For me, session 0, very important. I wish I had that kind of stuff ready and prepared for when I was running only War and my other tabletop groups when I was starting out. But even when I had a session 0, a really well written campaign theme written down, and also safety tools written out and everything. Oh, table rules, sorry. Table rules written out and everything. Players would still break them by either session 2 to 4, but that was doing non-paid GM stuff.
Right.
So it's good to have it, but oftentimes it doesn't work in my case. Must just be the difference in community. But
Maybe,
I definitely still recommend that stuff because it makes it a lot easier for me to go. You can reference the table rules to see what happens when this happens. And oftentimes, one of my favorite rules on my table is that, hey, if I make a ruling on something, you don't like it, bring it up right then and there so I can double check myself. And if I make the ruling again, then we just drop it until the end of the session. And that has actually saved one character's life when I was playing up Black Crusade. I was flipping through the book really quickly, and they did a really terrible job writing this book. In the system, there's a fear rating. In one section, it's for everyone. In the next section, in a complete area of the book, there's a special section for the PC's fear rating in which they get to resist it at.
Jeez.
So literally by 10 points, a character died from a heart attack to just going into a catatonic state.
Wow.
Big difference there.
Yeah.
I think with home games, I grew up, we didn't do that stuff. It was just my family and close friends. So you already kind of knew what would trigger each other back then, you know, like, and it really wasn't a thing. And we didn't really do session zeros growing up. As I've gotten older, I do session zeros like all the time now. Even for a rare home game, I do them. It'll be different for my home games because I don't necessarily have to go over like X cards or things that are, because it's just, okay, this is what I do with those session zeros with home games is this is what I want to run. What do you guys think? And what do we want to do together? We kind of build it together. The biggest thing that I do with all my session zeros, and I kind of treat my session zeros for my paid clients just like I treat when I do streams, like charity streams. So obviously I talk about, is there anything that's going to upset you, right? Because that's important. If somebody's paying me to run a game for them, I want to make sure that I'm not going to do something that's going to, you know, upset them or cause them problems in any kind of way. So it's like, let me make sure I know this stuff before I sit down at this table and put you in a situation that you just paid for that you don't want. And the coolest thing that I do, and if you guys don't know about this, I rave about this, Dekuma. If you know what Dekuma is, it is the coolest thing ever. I now use it on every session zero I run for clients, every session I run for streams. It's, you use tarot cards.
Wait, save it because I have a big question about tools. About your favorite tools.
But it's part of my I include that in my session zero all the time, and I just ran it for the first time for in-person clients recently, and when we did that, they said that before we even played the game, they said this is the best thing that they've ever experienced at a tabletop. Awesome. And we hadn't even started playing yet. It was just the session zero. I will say I generally do session zeros free for my clients. I don't charge them for that because that's ridiculous in my opinion. I mean, because you're going to sit down with them. You're not playing. We're just going over the game and trying to make sure everybody's on the same page. So I don't do that. It's always a free session zero. So.
In every business except maybe law, you get a free session to talk about what you want to do. I always see it that way. It's like your pre-contract meeting, you know.
Yeah, it's different when it's with a one shot because of that truncation. It's just like tacking on to the beginning of a one shot. But then for me, my session zeros, because my games, I get tired very easily, so I don't do long games. I do like 3.5 hours usually with a break in the middle. And so a session zero will take about an hour or so. And so for a new campaign, that session zero will bleed into world building because I build the world with my players, will bleed into the start of the game. And so they still pay for session zero because really it's just part of the first session for me.
Okay.
That makes sense if you're doing it that way. Like I always do a separate session. That's why I don't do it. If it was all at the beginning of it, they'd pay for the first session because if we're going to start playing, that's what we're paying for is to play. So
a customer comes to you and they say, I want the Critical Role or Stranger Things experience.
I tell
what
them,
do you do? What does that mean? And then what do you do?
I ask them first of all, I will ask them what they mean with that. And secondly, I say, are you a professional actor? Because if you're expecting me to be on that level of that, it's not just the DM. Matt Mercer isn't the reason why Critical Role does so well. It's the whole team, the whole cast, the way they all are involved, the way they all do their characters. So if you're not able to bring that level, you can't expect somebody else to bring it for everybody at the table. Yeah. So, and I mean, I kind of lay it out just like that when I tell them. I say it very nicely and professionally, but if that's what you're looking for, you better have a team of pro actors with you.
And I've never had that question asked of me.
Really?
I have.
No. I'm so surprised by that.
I have.
Yeah. You know, I have
3 emails in the last month. 3 emails just this last month alone. 3 emails. I want the Critical Role. I mean, what is that? What do you mean you want the Critical Role?
Never.
Someone playing Tal'Dorei? We can do Tal'Dorei. No. I want to play Critical Role.
Someone said I was coming in quieter. Am I still coming in quieter, Deep Squirrel, or is my volume back up? I can kick it up a little bit. I try not to overshadow the players, so just let me know if you can't hear me, though.
The players?
The players.
The guests.
Scott's, all right, guys, games. You heard it. This isn't going to be... Scott's going to run a game for us. All right, Scott, what are we doing?
We're doing this.
Dun, dun, dun.
I just rolled a 22, so do I succeed?
All right, thank you. So
thanks, James.
I'm going to ask a couple business questions now, because a lot of these are really more about the craft. But, you know, this is not only about craft, it's also about the business side. So did you set up a business entity, an LLC, a self-proprietorship, an incorporated company or anything? And has it affected your taxes? Are those things that you worry about? Wow, look.
It is so complicated in Germany because for those who don't know me, you can probably tell that I am not German based on my accent, but I am an American expat living in Germany. And when you are a freelancer in Germany, it is super complicated. Like there's something called value added tax, VAT. Yeah, and it only applies to European customers. And the German government tried to charge VAT on everything so far. And I was just like, America. You can't charge 19% on American customers, and that's the majority of my people.
Oh, that's
they were basically making it. Well, that's the thing. Like, they were basically trying to make it so that I would end up making $5,000 in the entire year with all of the taxes that they were charging. And I just went, no. It is super complicated. But I am registered as a freelancer here.
Deep Squirrel's throwing you some love. So that's right, folks. It's 3 a.m. where you're at.
Yep. I suffer.
If you don't want to answer it, you can just let me know you don't want to answer it.
No,
it's okay.
I have not set up the LLC or anything like that. I kind of get paid through PayPal and Zelle. That's mostly what I do for my stuff. And yeah, I just added on to my taxes. It's like extra income.
Okay.
So I can keep it at that. But it's the hard part for me is balancing everything and make sure that my guys are all getting what they're supposed to. I try to get them to all get out to where they can get Zelle, but because they all want PayPal. I'm like, every time you do PayPal, it takes money away from not only when the client sends it to me, but to you. Like, get on Zelle, guys. So
yeah. I mean, that's important.
Best thing I have is a Discord server. I haven't looked into the tax part that much. It's kind of a headache too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just that in Germany, you have to be very, very on top of all of your paperwork. So
it sounds about right for Germany, because the Germans are very, I don't
bureaucratic.
Very
like
bureaucratic.
anal about that stuff. They're like they're very like.
Yeah, and it's one of those things like if you have an invoice, you cannot have a digital copy of the invoice because then they say, oh, but you could have changed the digital copy. So you need to have everything in hard copy and no copies on your computer at all.
Yeah.
Like,
wow.
I'm sorry, what?
Just for anybody who might be offended by me talking about how the Germans are anal about stuff, I was born in Germany. I lived in Germany multiple times. I've been around the Germans. I love the German people. So I'm not hating. I'm just saying they're very, very precise about everything. So
Germans would agree with you. Don't worry.
Yeah.
So as a pro, how do you find clients?
Well, that part is easy for Start Playing anyway. People just find my game listings on startplaying.games and sign up for them. I don't have to do very much. Sometimes I'll post in my Discord server. I have an upcoming games channel, and then I post on my social media. Like if I need more players at a table, I'll post on social media.
Nice.
Well, I have to go searching almost everywhere. So Start Playing, Discord servers, and also social medias. That's where I post everything pretty much. I guess I kind of run very niche systems, or just systems where people often don't want to go looking for a public group to play in.
Yeah, all my stuff is social media and people finding our website and messaging us through there. Like it sounds nice to do it the way you do, but I have to go hunt because I got like 3-4 guys that work under me. So like I got to hunt for everybody. So I'm always trying to find stuff. So I'm constantly posting and sharing things on places.
Sorry, there's a bug.
Did you get it?
No, I
Bug is
didn't.
back. In the green room, there was a bug bothering Anya. No, it's back.
But yeah, like the way I usually do it is, and also word of mouth. Like I'm constantly wearing my own shirts out when I go in public, and if people come up to me like, oh, you play Dungeons and Dragons, or like, oh, that's a Mind Flare, or like, oh, like, you know, whatever, like introduction, or I like your shirt. I'm like, oh yeah, like I made this. Oh yeah, and then it leads into conversation. So I'm always word of mouth and constantly talking to strangers who may or may not like D&D and telling them how great Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop RPGs are. So
here's one that I think is important for almost any DM. How do you vet potential players or tables?
Interestingly, that part's easy for me because people who don't want to fill out lines and veils don't join my tables. They will say something like, oh, why would you use this? Oh, we don't need this. This is stupid. And then I'm like, okay, that's nice. Bye. Because those are people that I don't want at my tables. People who care about the safety of everyone at the table are the ones I want. There have been a couple of times where I've had bad actors and I mean that in the negative person kind of sense of things. But it's been like 2 out of, what am I at, 135 pro games?
Wow, nice.
So that's a pretty good track record.
Yeah. I do something similar with my casting calls. I have questions that are meant to weed out problematic players.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it seems like they kind of like illuminate themselves, much like what Ian says. They usually don't actually fill out the lines and veils. I actually had one player start trying to discuss it with me. I said, nope, just fill it out.
Yeah.
And then they eventually just gave up on it. So, and then also sometimes the problematic players don't want to pay for games, so that also eliminates them as well. But I also have like a table rules doc, pretty much vets people out.
Yeah, I have certain rules as in like what ages I'm willing to do. Generally, what I do is I have a conversation with them to get an understanding what type of game that they want, not just like one person, but everybody at the table. Because if somebody wants to play an evil character and everybody else wants to play heroes, it's not going to work. And so we have a very, then that's where I will sit down with them as a group and explain to them how this probably is not a good idea, and not to put, hey, I know you want to play an evil character, but most people don't know how to play an evil character in a group of good people. So so you may not want to go that route because it's going to cause problems for your friends who are also paying for this game. But I haven't had, honestly, I've been really lucky with my paid clients. I've not had a single bad table.
That's awesome.
With my paid clients. I don't know if I'm just getting real lucky or if the way I explain things from the beginning to everybody there, if it just kind of makes everybody click. But whatever it is, I've been blessed with my paid clients. I've had terrible games who are not paid that give me nightmares to this day. But everybody who's paid for it they have been wonderful clients on my end. I've been blessed.
So this is a pointed question. I'm not even sure I should ask it. Do you feel you're fairly paid as a DM?
It's a challenge to say that because you're paid, at least the way it works on Start Playing, is you're paid per player at the table. And so there are times when, I'm willing to run a game for 2 players. So when that happens, no, I'm not getting paid fairly. I'm not getting paid enough because I'm running this game for 3.5 hours and not making nearly enough. But then sometimes I have 5 players at the table, and that is plenty for fucking bug. Sorry. And that is wonderful. Like that is perfectly fine for me.
I can't believe you think your players are bugs. That's terrible.
There to be squished.
Well, see, I'm not, because again, I'm not like, I don't do the start play. I have a set standard of what it will be for the table. I generally have a set standard for how many people can play. I will allow people to go over, but if they do go over, we will add an extra fee because it does add a lot more work for a storyteller to prep for like 8 players versus 6 or less. And people don't realize it, but it can be a huge difference because adding 2 more players in a fight makes you making the work to come up with a challenging fight for your players so much more difficult. So, but yeah, we have a standard rate for it, and honestly, sometimes I don't even feel like that it is enough, but I want it to be fair to the players. So just because some of these preps can be a
doozy.
Yes, it can be.
So I charge per player, and hopefully it gets between the 3-player count, the 6-player count, and I usually run a 3 to 4 hour game. So usually that's kind of equates to almost minimum wage sometimes. So, or over, and then of course I use that funding to just basically buy more products to help me with the game.
So you make no money. You spend it all on product.
I mean, I do too. I'm with him. I don't really make any money out of this. Like, it goes right back into it so I can provide more stuff for people.
Y'all need to talk to Anya. She knows how to make money.
Okay, so it's just me making money off of this. Okay.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm just bad with my expense habits. I don't know. Like, ooh, I want this. I want that.
I mean, so to be fair for me, like I have, so there's this, I lived in Arizona before living in Germany, and there's this company called Bookman's. They're like a used bookstore, but it's like this massive thing. They have CDs, they have musical instruments, they have everything. And so you can bring books in for store credit and then use that store credit to buy things like full price with the store credit. I got all of my D&D books with store credit when I moved to Germany because I brought in like 100 books and got all of the store credit. I literally had like $300 worth of store credit. And so I just got all of my D&D books there. I have not paid for a single D&D book because I got them all on store credit.
What systems have you... I had to think about how to ask it. So you've mentioned several systems you already are running. Have you had... at first, I want to know what systems you run and are willing to run. But also, have you had people come to you asking for systems you didn't know and you had to figure out how to run it?
Oh, my answer to that is I'm sorry, I don't know how to mesh these two things that are very disparate for a singular player, because both times it's happened, it's been for a singular player who wasn't willing to pay a full table price to be a 1-player game. So I just said, no, not going to happen.
Yeah, don't blame me on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would say for me, I've had people, Tiffany recently, well, not recently, a while ago, but everything's been so crazy for me. I haven't really been able to run a game for them, but they wanted me to run the Avatar: The Last Airbender, which I have experience. I have experience with Powered by the Apocalypse. I've run Masked, Monster of the Week. I've run a bunch of different Dungeon World. I've run a bunch of different Powered by the Apocalypse. So it's not super difficult. And I know the world, but like I don't know it in the way that I want to know it to run it for them. And I really need to sit down and do that for Tiffany. But yeah, I get people asking me to run games, but most of my clients are like D&D D&D. That's what they want. They want D&D. Because most people that are paying for this are either people who run all the time and want somebody to run it for them, or brand new, don't know the system and want somebody to teach them. And I guess, you know, if D&D, if TTRPGs were drugs, D&D would be the gateway drug.
Honestly, yeah, because everyone knows D&D, but there's so many other games out there. And so when you discover that, and it's really interesting for me not to go off on a tangent, but I'm going to. Serenity was my first TTRPG.
Oh, wow.
You got to play. You got to run for me.
Yeah.
D&D wasn't my first either.
So like 14 years ago, 15 years ago, whenever I was a freshman in college, was when I started playing TTRPGs because I joined all of the nerd clubs, and the TTRPG club said, hey, there's a Serenity campaign that's going to start. Who wants to be a player in it? And my hand shot straight up. I was like, yes, please. Give me cowboys in space.
Yep.
I'm so jealous of that because I've wanted to play Serenity, but I can never find people who like it as much as you and I do. And so nobody else wants to play Serenity. And I'm like, I want to play Serenity so bad.
It's amazing. I adore it. It's so much fun. Okay, so apparently I need to run a game for you guys.
The brown coats.
Yeah.
Space operas are my jam. I've been watching all those sort of weird sci-fi TV shows.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of why I started doing film stuff and whatnot. Nice. So the question was
games you run.
Yes, games I run.
And what
so
do you do
typically I run Warhammer 40k games
Mm-hmm.
because many GMs don't like running them, I guess. I'm not really sure. But it seems like most people have private communities and they're already running games for their friends locally. And I started up in the pandemic, so everyone was going online. So that's probably why I got most of my games. And then now I basically run Warhammer 40k because that's the only system I really know super well.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to want to run anything else. Though if it's a system I don't own, then I'd like a copy at least.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking you about that system, the Warhammer system, how different is it from like the actual, war game itself?
Oh, I actually play the war game and I play the systems.
That's why I figured you played both. I mean,
completely different. Completely different. But
they're unrelated except by name.
Yeah, they're unrelated by name. So in the Warhammer war game, mostly you're playing a commander, commanding little troops to go out and fight a whole army, and that lasts for like 4 hours maybe. While in the tabletop RPGs, you are playing a singleized person. You're supposed to be like the center of the focus of the story. Oftentimes, they don't get players to understand that when they come to play the tabletop RPG, even though they say they play it a lot, and also they mention how much they know about the lore, they don't properly grasp that they're supposed to be the main characters of this story. So when they start saying silly things like talking about what the Primarchs are up to and everything like that, it's just like, they aren't important. You are and your character is. This is like 5 people, which is the players, grouping up to go on a random adventure in space. So I hope that answered your question.
It does, because I mean, I know 40k. I played Warhammer Fantasy, tried 40k, and a bunch of other war games, but I was always wondering how it translated to the tabletop when I saw that they had made a tabletop for it. So thank you.
I've been planning on using the miniatures to do like an in-person game at some point because I have.
It makes sense too.
Yeah,
you have them.
For some reason, Games Workshop is just really bad at supporting the tabletop version because they could take all that stuff. They have the miniatures, the battle maps, and everything like that, and just let Cubicle 7 use it more efficiently, and then I'll have way less prep to do.
My best friend used to work for Games Workshop, so I know a little bit about it, and I'm gonna have to say no comment beyond that.
Yeah, you sound like you know an ex-employee. All right, goofy or serious?
I try to. Oh.
No, just both, because both are very interesting.
Why choose? Yeah. Why choose?
Okay.
You can have goofy and serious. I mean, I think sometimes the best moments in a game are when it's super serious, and then there's just this moment of somebody says or does something that's silly, and it just breaks that tension, but like in a good way. It doesn't ruin the game. It just breaks it. Because in reality, if you were some crazy adventure going out and fighting all these things, you wouldn't be sane. There'd be something a little bit off with the way you think. So it it works and it's fun. And at the end of the day, you want to have fun, even in a series.
Yeah. I have a really good example with my Serenity game because I have this one player. I love him so much. Brian, if you're watching, you're ridiculous. But he is like the king of puns. And he, at one point, months ago now, absolutely broke me because like every other sentence was another pun. And it was just, I was under the table with laughter. But he was making puns in the game today, very lighthearted, all of that. And then a blip came on the radar, and there was a ship with no core containment. And it was Reavers. And the immediate switch that caused when I said those words was amazing. It was beautiful.
You know what?
And that's where we'll end the session tonight. Like that's the moment you go, okay.
But you know what though? If you think about the show, right?
Yeah.
There were so many things that make you laugh in that show.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And there were so many moments in that show that were super serious. So so I'm saying, like, why choose? I mean, you're gonna and look at real life. You're going to have laughter. You're going to have sorrow. You know, you don't just have one or the other. So
yeah, 100%.
And Salim, we didn't let you talk. Sorry.
Yeah,
that's all right. Well, I like to mix like a good. Well, I've been running a lot of like really grim dark systems, Warhammer 40K, and immediately what I learned is people like to joke about the system, but when they're in the thing trying to role play, they don't actually want the grim darkness. So I try to go for a Venture Brothers approach. That way they can be serious, goofy, and I don't have to do anything really brutal just to be brutal.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Gotta mix it up.
That's an interesting observation that I think. Yeah. I suspect it takes time for you to realize how to make that work.
Mostly I do a lot of parody characters.
Yeah. I will also add this just because, again, paid clients, I think a lot of how we run it, how serious we run it or how goofy we run it really depends on who we're running it for, right? If everybody at the table is like playing super emo grim characters, like, then that's kind of what the session's going to be. If nobody wants to come out of character, right? That really plays a big part into how you're going to run it. But if I have a choice, both.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it can go the other way. I remember you were in one of my Tales from the Loop games, Morgan. Actually, you weren't in the one that I did this in, though. It was a goofy game, you know. It's teenagers in the 80s, science fiction, whatever. But it needed the opposite of levity. It needed to be pushed a little into the hard part, into a little harder core. So I made this NPC that was a peer who had cigarettes and tried to push cigarettes on them. Oh my God. It turned into the craziest session and they loved it. But wow, it was not, it was amazing is you don't think about that stuff and you're just goofing around, and then, you know, teenage kids in the 80s, they do bad things. And that's the least of the bad.
So the theme song from Reefer Madness started playing in my head when you said that.
Pushing cigarettes.
It's such a good movie.
Yes.
I mean, it's not cigarettes, but still.
I'm going to do one more question before we take a little break. So what do you do to manage your mental health, to make sure you get enough rest, you get time between games, or whatever it is that you need to make sure you can be the best DM for someone, you know, day in, day out?
Anya, I think this is a question for you.
Why would you say that? Is it because I ran 2 games before this, did not sleep before the stream, and I'm going to be running a game at 5:30 in the morning?
No, that's definitely not why I asked you.
It was not on purpose. I did not mean to not sleep before the session, before this, and then I was just like, you know what, what's the point in falling asleep? I'm going to be exhausted when I wake up again. And then I forgot to cancel the 5:30 game, and now I have 4 players in it. While we were prepping, a 4th player joined, so hey.
Well, awesome, good for you on that one. And I didn't mean to call you out. It was just so funny because we were just talking about how late you're staying up, and then Scott's like, "How do you get enough rest?" I'm like, "Really, Scott? That's the question we're going with."
So,
It's not only about rest; it's about whatever you need.
to be fair, though, I do not do this ever. I am never up at 3:30 in the morning now. Like I'm never streaming at this time. I'm never running games at this time, and so the earliest that I run a game usually is 6 o'clock in the morning my time, because that's 9 p.m. on the West Coast US, and it's a perfectly fine time for me to wake up, and it's perfectly time for them to play. And so that is absolutely fine for me. And I get enough sleep the night before, and I'm awake at 5 o'clock. I make my coffee, and I'm good to go. Yeah. This is a special circumstance.
Yes, it is. I know. That's the only reason why I was teasing you, man.
Yeah. No, it's fine.
Well, for me, most of the time, like 30% of my players are often from UK, so they often want to sign up to play Warhammer 40K. It's usually like at 3 a.m. for them or something like that. So often I have to like be like the voice of reason for them, since that doesn't really end well. Then for mental health on my side, I actually chat with another fellow paid GM, or just a GM in general, just to like complain about players, to vent. Also support each other.
Yeah. So I can add to that Deep Squirrel in the chat. That's my mod and friend, and I absolutely rant to him at times when things are stressful.
And I'm pretty sure that's what Matt Mercer has, and that's why he's such a good GM, because he just complain to his friends who are at the table.
I think for me, the biggest thing I do is I make sure that I don't only run games. That's kind of what helps me not that doesn't get burnt out or feel over stressed, because I'll tell you, the weeks I don't have anything going on, I'm like, my wife's like, she can tell, she's like, you need a game. You need to go play something with somebody, go away. But yeah, because for me, if I'm not playing, that's actually more stressful than if I am playing. But I have to balance it, because I notice if I'm running too many games and I'm not actually a player in anything, I'll burn out.
Yeah.
So that's me. Sleep, Scott, I don't sleep. I'm up till at least 2-3 in the morning, and then I'm usually up sometime between 7 and 8 in the morning. So every day, Monday through Sunday. So, but yeah, that's what I do. I make sure that I'm in games as a player.
Nice. All right.
I think to add to that, actually, I do also, sorry,
okay.
I'm also in streamed games, which also helps, because I'm about to run an Under the Floorboards game on Girls Run These Worlds. But normally I'm a player at the tables on streamed games. I'm not the GM. This is a new thing, a 6-part series, which is wild for me. But being able to play in the streamed games, I also get to really up my acting chops, because I've been acting since I was 10. I love the theater. I love making people cry. That is my therapy, is making other people cry. I love the emotional scenes and things, and it's like a catharsis for me. So
100%.
I love it.
I will say all the games that I'm a player in are like streamed games or podcasts. So that's pretty much the only things I do anymore, is either I run a game, or it's a stream or podcast.
Yeah.
So I love it.
Same.
All right. We're at about halfway through. Why don't we take a 5 or 6 or 7 minute break, and we'll see you back in a few minutes. In the during the intermission, I run info on upcoming and currently running Kickstarters and backer kit projects. So if you see anything you like, hit the link and check them out, and maybe back some things that are really cool. See you in a few minutes, everybody.
Bye.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I hope you had a few moments to back a Kickstarter or something while we were out.
Yeah.
That would be very cool of you. If you do, let me know. I think that'd be awesome to know. All right. I'm going to get back to the questions, because we only have one more hour or so. Maybe not even that much. like 50 minutes, and I want to make sure I get to some of the cool stuff. It's all been cool, but there's more cool. So what are some of the weirdest or most interesting, and I guess most common questions prospective players ask you?
I think the biggest one for me is I get a lot of people asking about birthdays. Like, and if I run it for like their 9-year-old or 10-year-old.
Oh.
And I have on my site that I don't generally run for under 12, right?
You don't want to be a party clown?
No, it's not even that. It's just that most kids. I was an anomaly. Like when I was 5, my uncle handed me the DM's guide, the Player's Handbook, and the Monster Manual for 2nd edition AD&D, and I spent hours scouring through those pages trying to understand it. Most kids under like 10 don't have that focus. You're like, usually when you run a game for kids, you're only going to run it for like maybe an hour because their attention span is like, I want to go do something else now. And so if you're hiring me to run a 3-hour session for like a birthday party for like a table of 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds, it's gonna be chaos, and you're not gonna get your money's worth. But I have people always asking me if I'll run for kids, and they always swear that their 10-year-old is super mature. I'm telling you, my kid, he's 10, but he acts like he's 14. I'm like, yeah, okay.
Is that a good thing?
Yeah, that sounds like my rabbi getting his 6-year-old kids into the summer camp where I worked. That was like 8+, and they were way too young for it.
Yeah, it's just, and I have kids, and I try to run for my kids, and my 9-year-old has no attention for this. Like we sit down, he'll say, "Yeah, I want to play," and I'll make something, and then he's just like, "La la la la." He also, I think he has ADHD, so he's like, he's hopping all over the place. I'm like, sit down.
I feel that.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that'd be the question. Like, that's not really a weird question, but it's like something I get asked a lot. Like, what ages? And my other one is, will I run for 8 players or 10 players, or how big of a table will I run for? Those are questions I get asked a lot. Will
you run for an 8 or 10 player table?
Not. Generally, I don't run for an 8 or 10 player table. Yeah. I'm not against it. Again, I will usually add an extra fee to that. I usually try to keep it to 6 or less, because I honestly think it's for my players, right? When you have 8 people, combat takes forever.
Yeah.
Right? Even when you have 6 players or 4 players, it can take forever. But when you add those extra players on there, it saps so much of the time that can be used. Yeah, but it saps so much time for role playing, right? Because then all the time that you're not in combat, where you can be exploring and getting lore and doing all kinds of fun stuff, is cut out, because every time there's a combat, it's going to be at least half a session, if not more, with 8 players. So I always tell people, like, we can do it. It'll cost you more, and you're going to get less out of it, but we can do it.
I'm trying to think, and I can't. There's no like general weird questions that I usually get. I think that the weirdest, and this was one of the bad actor players, he was just being very strange and very specific about his hyper focus, like special interest. You get that sometimes, and especially in a hobby like this. And he was just being very insistent that I needed to watch this particular show, knowing that one of my lines is dismemberment, and that it was featured pretty heavily in said show. And that was like the weirdest thing, but there's no like general weird questions that I get.
Deep Squirrel. Oh yeah, I remember that dude. Made a lasting impression. He was helping
me through that situation.
This is hard, because I don't think I had any weird things. Mostly people ask me to run specific versions of Warhammer 40K, but this goes back to the earlier question. Typically I run stuff I'll actually enjoy running. That way I can actually do custom content for it properly. If I'm not into it, then I probably won't write very well for it. But I'll tell you, the most weirdest thing I ever saw is someone posted on a Only War thing for Only War is the Warhammer 40K system I was running. Primarily play a guardsman in that that game. someone posted saying they would like to play as a Charizard on Roll20. So
did you say, sure, I'll make it happen?
he wasn't paying. Now it's like,
if he was
not
paying.
worth the time.
It's not a Charizard, but oh, can you see it? I got this.
Yes.
Oh, Jig.
It's my cord organizer.
That question was asked when I was a younger GM, but now that I'm a more of a seasoned veteran, I realize that Warhammer 40K is kind of a bag of nonsense. So you could probably justify almost everything.
Yeah, totally.
What DMs have inspired you, and what did you pick up from them that you now have taken into your own games?
I get inspired by every GM I play with or come in contact with in some way or another. Good and the bad.
You learn from the good and bad.
I mean, I've met some bad GMs. I'm like, great guy, terrible GM, and I'm not doing what he did. You know, like mental note, 100%. Don't do that. Whatever that was, don't do that. I mean, obviously, it sounds so cheesy. Matt Mercer. I mean, when I say
valid.
You know, he is inspiring. Like him and all of them. You know, that's a big one. Brindley Mulligan. Brianna Guard, all those big names. I love the stuff that they've done. I love what they've done for the community. Scott, you're a GM. I mean, I played with you for 3 years, and I'm not saying this.
You can't include me. That's too weird.
Why can't I? No, I can't include you. I will say this for Scott. What I've learned from him is like a lot of intricacy and how to like take things that seem unconnected and find ways to bring them and connect them in ways that you're like, oh, like two seasons later, you're like, holy crap, like that was in season 1 and now like full circle. Like he does a really good job with like the lore, the world building, and it is very inspiring. I love the way Scott tells
most of that you inadvertently connect, and I just make it sound like I did
it. Well, the way you played off then. I mean, I do. I like that. Like there's a lot of good GMs out there. You know.
Yeah, like those big names, yeah, sure. But also the GMs that I play with, like Anne, I think her username is Exo Girl Wonder. She runs Good Society games, and I was in a campaign, a flight, what have you, on Girls Run These Worlds with her. Krifu from Manapot Studios, and Hedgehawk. And most recently Philippa Mort for Glitter Hearts.
Who is awesome.
They are all inspiring to me, and you really get to see the care and attention that they pay to their players as well, and it's just phenomenal.
And there is 2 other DMs that I want to say, like, kind of like you're saying. Tiffany, who ran for me, you Scott. She Dungeon Damsels. She runs like a whole roles cast. She's a great DM, and she incorporates a lot of story. She does a lot of singing with her stuff too, because she's got an amazing voice.
Nice.
So
she's a trained singer.
Yeah, I wish I could do that, but I can't. But and David Tilstra, if you know who David Tilstra is, he is a phenomenal human being and a really fun DM. He plays a lot of things fast and loose, but he does it in a way that makes it really, really fun. You know, like it's not that he doesn't care about the rules or throws them out, but it's more about the rule of cool and the story for him, and he blends it in really, really well. So I enjoy playing with him.
All right, I managed to assemble my list. So big names, just of course Matt Mercer. I'll get more into that with the other ones, and then Seth I forgot the Markowski. He does the fancy videos. And then the really big GM that I really like the most is the one that first got me into like Pathfinder. It was such an awesome session. I was playing a paladin, and we were flying this dragon, and then the dragon took off, started flying away, and I was like, well, what are you guys gonna do now? And then the GM was like, well, you can smite the dragon, and the barbarian can throw you at the dragon. And I was like, I become a evil seeking missile, and then we did that. And I killed the dragon. So becoming evil seeking missile was like the highlight of that's what I need to be as a GM. That's what Matt Mercer does. He always does the whole narrative thing. Yeah. And then few other GMs, I always hit the whole narrative story first thing, are always like a big on my list. So just random Discord name is that owl guy who ran Dungeon World for me, purely investigation campaign. Very interesting. And then Warhams that did the Warhammer sort of tabletop RPGs. They made Warhammer more interesting and fun because typically Warhammer comes off as too gritty, and they did like more satire, comedy approach. And I was like, I can run this if I just like ran it like that, more jokey and more relaxed. And then the Roll For It cast, I also like that as well.
Yeah. Oh,
I forgot
Mark.
one, so go ahead.
High Rollers, Mark. He is a wonderful human being and just a fantastic GM and just so knowledgeable and really wanting to explore like more of the role play side of things, which I know he doesn't get to do it as much as he would like, but does an incredible job of it. I got to see, I was at TwitchCon Amsterdam, and so I got to see the live show. It was only an hour long, but it was absolutely fantastic, and I loved what he did in that short amount of time.
Oh, that's awesome. You were at
Yeah.
There was one other one, and it's because Salim made me think of it. My uncle, he's not anything in the community, but I mean, he's the reason why I got to play. You know, like he's where I started this whole journey with. He's the reason why I have the love for this, and he ran games for me all the way up until I became a pro DM. And once I did that, he's like, I'm not running for you anymore. You can come run for me. And I'm not paying you because I ran it for you for years. But
I love it.
He is the biggest inspiration for me to get into this. And I almost forgot to give him a shout out.
How
Terrible
dare
nephew.
you?
So how much and what kind of prep do you do for a session?
As always, it depends. So, for example, I have certain one-shots that I am always running. And so a lot of them I know just like the back of my hand. I don't need to do any preparation beyond setting up the game room and getting all of the tokens in. There are other ones that are much more in-depth, like I'm running Wild Beyond the Witchlight right now, and that requires a lot more prep time.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say the same.
I would say try to maintain your sanity. Don't want to prep too much or too little. So I typically try to run very similar games or similar concepts. And then I usually, when I was doing like unpaid GM stuff, I learned just one adventure from the Only World rulebook. And I basically just reused that for almost like 8 different campaigns. I just kept revamping it. A GM that ran for Pathfinder Society, he had the same adventure, but it was set in a Western kind of setting. And then he like flipped it, and it was set in a carnival. So
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, like I have this one Monster of the Week session that if I have all new players, because sometimes I'll have players join multiple one-shot sessions with me, but if I have all new players in a session, this is the module that I'll run, especially for new players for Monster of the Week, because it's a really great introduction to the system. Right. And so I've run it probably 20 times at this point. Like, no joke, since like I think I started running Monster of the Week in March, somewhere like that. So like I've run it a lot.
Yeah, I'm kind of like you guys. I have a couple one shots that I have set up for, like, you know, people who are only going to try it one time, they want to do something like that. But if it's like a campaign, like the guys I just ran for today, that stuff I'm constantly prepping for it. Like sometimes I'm sitting here in the middle of the night, I'm like, ooh, an idea for their campaign. And I just start writing stuff. It's like something that doesn't really end. Like, I'm not doing it 24/7, but it just, inspiration's constantly coming. I'm adding things in there. Yep. Some of it they'll probably never come across, you know. But it's there in case it does get it. In case they open up that can, you know.
Yeah. Oh, and my Candela Obscura one is a really good example because it's a completely brand new system, and so I actually found myself writing a session in module format just
Oh,
because
interesting.
it's such an ingrained habit in me. And so I'll eventually release it as a module because it just makes sense. And it's become like, it's already 20 pages long. It's going to be a huge thing. You know, I made it into a module format. And so I had everything prepped. I had all of my like little bits of dialogue and my characters and things like that. And then I ran it the first session, and people were like, "Oh, well, there are bodies. Where's the morgue?" And so then I was like, "Cool, there's a morgue now." And I
Of
wrote a
course.
thing up about a morgue.
Well,
I wrote
dance
up a
for
creepy
that.
character who worked at the morgue.
That's one of the best things about if you're trying to create a module or like a one shot or something like that, like for yourself to either way
Yeah.
keep using it. It's good to like build something, run it, and then just add
Mm-hmm.
to it based on what happens with the different players,
Exactly.
because they'll think of things that you don't ever think of.
Yeah. Well, like that Monster of the Week session that I run a million times, it has never been played the same way twice,
I
ever.
believe
It's
I believe
different
that.
every single time. Even just the
Hmm.
party composition changes so much about how it's run. Like, I had one time where I had a player who was the spooky, but he didn't realize that he was getting premonitions and things like that. And so he rolled at the beginning of the mystery, and he had a vision come to him, and he was an influencer. And so he had this dream of flashing lights. He was on a red carpet, and just like this bright flash shines in his eyes, and there's a scream. And like it was completely different from how that module normally starts. But I was just like, you have this thing at the beginning of the mystery, and it's perfect for your character. And so this is how it's going to start. Ignore what normally is done.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, what makes a good session for A, people who come as role players,
Mm-hmm.
B, combat oriented players, and C, explorer players? And you get any explorer players?
Most of my players are explorer
That's
players.
cool.
There are very few people, like there are people who want to do combat, of course, but my players are mostly role play focused, interestingly enough. Or maybe not. I feel like as a woman, I kind of get more of those people, especially because my Imogen cosplay is my profile picture on Start Playing.
Yeah, I'm kind of agreeing with Game Master Vault. Have elements of all three in every session. I mean, I generally
Mm.
try to. And what you do is, I mean, you have it prepped for all those things. You have it prepped for, people who want to
Hmm.
have a lot of interaction with NPCs. You have it prepped for people who want to go out and see things. You have different areas, and you have several fights lined up. And you kind of
Hmm.
just let the players take you down the direction they want, right?
Hmm.
And most of my fights can either be avoided, or if they have certain ways, they might be able to avoid the fighting. So, like, even the fight scenes, if my players do not want to fight, they don't
Yeah.
necessarily have to.
Hmm.
Obviously there are some fights that are just going to happen. If you come to
Yeah.
the evil lich's house, you're not going to be like, "Hey, let's just be best friends." It's just not generally going to happen.
Hmm.
A holy paladin is not going to be friends with a lich. It just doesn't usually happen that way. But yeah, I think that's about the best way to put it. You know,
Hmm. Yeah, there's
because
definitely a comment that's avoidable in my games. Like my Wild Beyond the Witchlight game today, they were threatened by some people, and instead of just starting a fight, they intimidated them into leaving.
Nice. I mean, Wild
Because,
Beyond the Witchlight is
yeah,
built around the idea that you don't have to combat anything and
yeah.
complete, which I think was beautiful and a really insightful move by WotC. You know, there aren't
Hey,
many
it's
built
my
like that,
favorite
though.
kind of game.
Yeah,
I
I
would
don't care about combat. It kind of bores me sometimes, I'll be honest.
yeah, me too.
But that's me.
That's
I
me
like
also.
combat if it's done right. Yeah, I like combat if it's done
Hmm.
right.
If
Right.
it's done right.
Yeah. But I don't necessarily need combat or anything. I honestly would be interested in playing a witch, like that one there,
Yeah.
where we could see if we can get through without a single fight. If the whole party could like just find a way to make it through without a single fight, that'd be really
That would be so
interesting.
cool.
Could you imagine if you just everybody works together to try to find a way to not fight anything?
Well, I would say my players were doing well so far, but they did get attacked by mud methods today. So,
They failed. They failed the challenge.
They did. They went like 8 sessions without a fight.
Pacifist Party. That would be the name of the group. We are the Pacifist Party.
So, Salim, are there Warhammer players that don't want to have combat?
Well, surprisingly, I actually had such a group, and that was like probably one of my best campaigns. Is they would always like focus on actually try to either solve the mystery or interacting with NPCs, getting to know the layout and stuff like that, and they just enjoyed all my NPCs. So it was very easy to just make the fun interacting with NPCs. But then I get players that focus on just the rules, what the character can do on the character sheet, and how much damage they can deal, and they always end up going, well, this guy won't get out of the way of the door. I'm blowing him up and everything in front of the door.
Now, I'll tell you right now, I'm the kind of player I don't want to say min-max, but I like to build my characters to where they can do damage if need be. But
Yeah, min-max.
But I don't like to say that term because everybody puts such a negative spin on that. But like to me, like if you're not trying to make your character useful in what they do, like what is the point? Like, like that's my thought process. I want my character to be useful at what he's supposed to do. But I don't go out of my way to look for fights. I mean, Scott, you'd agree. Other than the Rakshasa, I never like looked for a fight other than the Rakshasa. But that was because the Rakshasa was coming after Jada.
And looking for the fight.
Yeah, and looking for the fight.
fair.
But this is funny. What level were we in that one, Scott? We were like 6th level.
6 or 7.
Oh.
At the time, I think.
Yeah, and we had no idea because it was in disguise, and he was trying to take one of our players, and I was like, "You're not doing it." And at the time, I was a blade singer wizard, and I've been pretty BA up until this point with a lot of the fights. So I was like talking mad trash to this Rakshasa, and when it came down to the fight, everything I did was like useless, and I was just like, and we found out afterwards, like me in real life, I like puckered. I was like, oh my god, I think you're gonna give it right to me. And I was like, what? and I'm not normally like that, but that was hilarious. The one time I do it was against something at my level I should not have been doing that to. Scott really put the scare in me on that one.
So, what is in your DM's toolbox? Outside of D&D Beyond, I'm going to assume... Well, actually, no. Salim probably may not use D&D Beyond since you're running Warhammer mostly.
Well, I was an indie judge, so my toolbox is huge, so big I can't actually find all the stuff I actually want to use right when I want to use it. Mini web tools. I think I have a bunch of books over here. I have a giant bookshelf. So typically I run Foundry. And even when I can't run the thing in Foundry, I still have Foundry open because that's like the most essential tool. Because with Foundry, I found this useful module that allows me to basically use a shortcut key and then search in Foundry for whatever handout, token, etc. that I have. So if I'm running in Roll20 and I go, I don't know what a void ship is. I quickly open Foundry, type in void ship, open up that journal entry, and I just read from the journal entry. So... Foundry's on top of my hit list. It is a virtual tabletop, so you can just run the thing in Foundry, but sometimes systems aren't always in Foundry. Then I have a bunch of random generators online. Mostly I use a random name generator, the random fantasy name generator, something like that. Then I have a couple for creating randomly generate maps, some for creating like whole taverns. Most of the tools I found online are mostly for D&D 5e, so not much luck there for when I'm doing sci-fi stuff. Yeah. But I do use Dungeon Draft to make my battle maps occasionally when I have time.
Yeah.
Me too.
I do that too.
Awesome.
Yeah. For me, I have like my biggest tool is the Role and Play Press books. They are absolutely fantastic, and they just came out with a sci-fi one that I use constantly with my Serenity game. Sometimes things don't apply because, of course, there are not any aliens in Firefly, but I just re-roll if that happens. Also, this is a recent discovery that I had, dm.tools/tracker, tools plural, is an amazing initiative tracker. Like you can roll for your monsters in this, and like you can input their HP and AC. Like it will automatically populate. Like if you type in Mud Muffet, it'll populate all of the information that you need. It is absolutely fantastic. I just discovered it about a month ago and I love it. Besides that, the role VTT, I was an affiliate GM for them with Start Playing Games. So I was running games on there for 2 months and I loved it. So I kept running my games on there. But all of my maps are stored in there. All of my PDFs. Like I can literally put every resource that I have onto the website and then just pull it into my game rooms, and I love it.
Nice.
I use everything from Roll20, Shard. I've used Foundry. I've used a bunch of those things for running online games. It really, again, for me, I will learn it if whoever wants me to run it, that's what they want to use. Because a lot of times, my clients will come to me like, "Hey, we like to use this one. Do you know how to use that one?" I'm like, "Oh, no," or "Yes." And if I don't, then I'm like, "I'll learn it." So I use a lot of those things. I use D&D Beyond for my D&D campaigns, just because they made it so interactive to where you can do, like, I can set up my encounters in there. I can do, I can do combat tracking in there too. I can roll for my monsters in there, inside there. I can even group them. Like, so if I have like a 12 gnolls or something like that, and I don't want to have it roll for all of them, I can put them in groups. And when I roll initiative, this group it gets this one and this one. And that way I can break it up a little bit.
That's
so
nice.
Yeah, so I use D&D Beyond for a lot of that kind of stuff, as well as for the campaigns themselves. Because when players build their characters, I can track everything in there. If they have questions, I don't have to wait for them to bring the sheet to me to look at. I can just go right onto there and look at their sheet and say, okay, yeah, this you did this right, or no, you need to change this or whatever. So some of the bigger things I use Describe.com. I don't know if you know Describe. I'm an affiliate with them, but I'm not trying to necessarily promote them in this right now. But they recently came out with this thing called Compositions, and I love it. I can literally set encounters in there, set music tracks and ambiances and sounds to it. So then, like, when they get to it, I can just read right there, have the music ready to go, click on it, and plays it, and they can hear it. I love their composition thing. I'm like, this is, like, awesome. I've been using it for this new campaign, and they're loving it. And Decuma. Like, I was talking a little bit about it earlier.
Right.
I live by Decuma now. Tiffany from Scott's game and from Dungeon Damsels, which I've played with her, she introduced me to it. I think the first time was when me and you did the dad's game, Scott.
Yeah, it was Emmy nominated this year. It didn't win, but it was nominated and
it should have
did
won
really well. Really interesting tool.
I use it for one shots. I use it for campaigns. I use it for charity streams. I use it for everything I do.
Okay.
And it has changed the way all my games are. For one, because what it does is you draw cards for all the players, right? And there's certain cards that are for like their relationship with each other, their relationship with the world around them, things about the world, right? And what it does is you ask each player certain questions and they answer them, but it doesn't always have to be them. Like if you get stuck with a question you're not sure, other players can say, "Hey, I have an idea. Do you want to hear it?" And then you guys start doing, and it just turns into this whole massive building, not just the party and your character, but like the dynamics with each other and outside the world and all these other, and it has changed my sessions. When we did the charity streams with it, everybody was like, "Dude, I feel like these characters, we've been playing them forever and we haven't even played our first game yet." So it's amazing. I speak so highly of Decuma. It changes everything.
Okay, I'm gonna need a spelling because I definitely spelled it the Japanese way.
Decuma.
DC, not a K.
It's a tarot deck size deck of cards.
And they have a digital PDF version of it, so you can check that out. It's by Golden Lasso Games. I wanted to double check, make sure I was saying right. Abria was a part of developing this.
Oh, okay.
So I believe she was a part of. I know she was a part of it in some fashion. I think she actually helped develop it, but it phenomenal. Greatest tool ever for me.
One other that I thought of, the Goblin's Notebook. It's a really, really good online tool for building out your campaigns. You need to have a Gmail account, which I know not everyone does, but what I really like about it is that I can share it with my players and they can add things to it. So like they can add information about your character, their characters and stuff like that. You can modify the different tabs, labeling them whatever you want. And you can link, like you can click on an entry when you're editing something, and it automatically gets linked, it gets tagged in what you're writing, so that when you save it, you can just click on that thing and it goes to the other tab. So
nice. I'm checking that out right now. It's the goblin.net, right?
Yeah, I just pulled it up just to remind myself. The goblin.net with a dash between the and goblin. I'm on their Patreon. It's like $2.50 a month, so that I can use it for more than one campaign.
Nice.
But it's not expensive at all. It's the only thing that I really spend money on to run games.
Another one that I like is worldanvil.com. So I use World Anvil for like world building as well as like maps. So if my players at any time want to look at the map, they can look at it. And like we'll track where they've been on there. Like you can put like little pins and put details, so you can like mark cities and things like that, so they can see information on it. And then like you can mark where they've been and what happened there, so that way if they want to look back over it, they can. But there's a lot more to it. It's I will say it's not super. It's a little complex, but it's really good, and you can put a lot of information in there.
Okay. What about you, Salim?
I also use Armoria. It's like ARMORIA. It's basically a random generator for like heraldries, like shields, flags, stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
I use that to like create like sigils and stuff for like houses for nobles and everything. And then I have a lot of tools.
Sorry, I just realized that we were talking like bouncing off of each other, and I wanted to make sure that you got stuff.
That's one of those questions that it just sort of feeds conversation between DMs.
Get excited and start sharing all the tools.
Right. Use what?
I use I know of all those other tools because they were submissions last time I was a judge, but haven't had much chance to really get into them because oftentimes I just need a quick random generator to create like 1 or 2 assets, and I usually run from there. Mostly, I actually use other rule books to help as the tools as well. Warhammer 40k's Rogue Trader is good for. It has like a bestiary for making like life forms, flora and fauna, so hostile creatures and plant life. And then they also have one for creating random star systems, planets, and stuff like that. So I use that to actually make a custom setting for Warhammer 40k, or system. Sorry, I probably should use that. And then I also use the bestiary to create like a few random custom monsters. I actually used it to make something called an owl dragon. Basically, I took the body of a owl and merged it with a dragon, and it shoots ice instead of fire. And I put that in Warhammer 40k, and I was just like, yeah, that's the thing. It can tear apart tanks, so don't walk up to it. Like they walked
among these tools, none of you have mentioned any kind of matching services like RPG Match or Start Playing or anything like that. So what tools do you use for client acquisition and things like that?
Oh, I didn't really think of counting Start Playing games as a
either, but I thought about it when you were talking.
My website.
Yeah, my Discord server.
Oh, I do use Discord for almost all my clients too.
Oh yeah.
Discord, and what was the other thing I was just thinking of? I don't know. If I remember it, I'll tell you.
Discord is a good communication tool since you have forums and also individual conversations happening at the same time, plus voice talk at a moment's notice. So that's definitely a good tool just for basically communication alone. Start Playing is good for looking for players, but usually I just use everything, so I can't really specifically say that as my tool.
All right.
God, do you mind if I put a link so people can find Decima if they want?
Sure. Send it to me in chat. I'll drop it in.
Okay. Awesome.
So, how do you get paid, and do you require a deposit? Like, how can people pay you? Do you require deposits to take them on as a client?
Start Playing does everything for me. That's part of the reason why I love it. They have everyone's credit cards, and they charge everyone in my games an hour after start time. So I don't have to do anything with it. And I love that aspect of it. They take 10% from GMs for marketing and things like that, and keeping the website up, all of that. I personally think it's worth it to have that fee taken out just because they make things so easy. And like even when people's cards decline, they have a system in place for that. And it's happened to me 2 or 3 times. And every time I've just DM'd the player and said, hey, just FYI, please fix your credit card before the end of the session. And they always do it.
Well, you guys got me beat on that. I have to do it all myself. I'm manual.
Yeah.
So, but what we generally do is they pay up front for the game. I hold it. I don't give it to my players, or not my players, my DMs until they've run the session, and I've heard back from both the DM and the players. And at that point, when I've heard like, hey, yeah, it happened, it went great, we had a good time, then I release the funds to my teammates. But I've had issues where people are like, yeah, we want to do that, and then they don't want to pay. So that's the only reason why you pay up front. It has to be at least 24 hours before the actual game. I don't require you to pay before then, but at least 24 hours before the game, so that way we can lock in the date and time. Because the last thing I want, especially since a lot of the clients that hire my guys are in-person games. So before I say, hey, Justin or whoever, I need you to drive down to Miami Gardens, I want to know that money's going to be there for them, because some of these guys are driving 30-40 miles one way to run a game, and if they do that and they don't pay, then they just need that
it's
trip.
not cool.
So that's generally how we do it. I basically, in a way, I'm kind of like Start Play, but I'm doing it all myself.
I also use Start Playing. Charging before the game makes sense because that's kind of why the main reason why I do pay GM, because it makes people committed to the game. Then Start Playing handles the refunds and I guess player complaints.
Yeah. And also handles it when you have a problem player, because you can send in a ticket and say, hey, this is what happened with XYZ person. And they look into it and potentially ban them from the website. And then you don't have to worry about them rejoining your game.
Nice.
Yeah, there's some real benefits to that. It's a terrific site.
I've been blessed. I don't have any bad clients. Thank you, my clients, for being amazing, all of you.
It's always good to have good players.
The vast majority of my players are absolutely wonderful. There's just a couple.
And I would agree. I honestly think the vast majority of people in our community are pretty wonderful. I mean, you always hear those horror stories.
Yeah.
And I think we always feel like those are so dominant because you hear them so much. But it's like anything. You're always going to hear the bad. You're not going to hear all the good. So I think the majority of our people out there, our fellows TTRPGers, are generally just wonderful people. So,
what did you do the first time you got a paycheck for DMing? Like you had income come in and you looked at it in your Zelle or whatever, and you're like, I just got paid for DMing.
Yeah, I mean, you're like, wow, like it's real. Like I'm official. Like it's not just me saying, hey, I'm doing this. I am doing this.
Yeah, I don't remember. I took a long time to pick up because I started at the very end of October, and so I was going into the slow season, and so. Yeah, I was getting paid to run D&D and other systems, but it didn't really pick up until February, I would say. And that's when I really started like running games constantly throughout the week. So, yeah, I don't remember what I thought the first time the money dropped in my account. I think it was just like, okay, thank God I have more money.
Right. But wait, there's a slow season?
Yeah.
There's seasons to D&D gaming?
Yeah.
Well, times people are willing to pay and times aren't. Like when it's closer to the end of the year, when like Christmas is coming up and people got to buy presents. Nobody wants to do it. Beginning of the year, though, like you said, right around like right into January, beginning of February, like that's usually a good time to be doing it, because that's when everybody wants to do it, because it's New Year. Let's start a new campaign. Yeah.
Yeah, and then also I found the past couple of weeks were a little bit slower. Part of that is because I was in Japan on vacation, but I was still running games while I was there. And so, but coming back, I did feel like things were a little bit slower this past week. So I think that summer months people are more likely to be, you know, going to the outdoors and things like that, maybe playing a little bit less.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah. That Labor Day's coming up. That's what it is.
And I do run for mostly U.S. clients, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I would say you're right about. For me, it's this time frame because everybody's starting to go back to school. I think people are focused on getting their kids ready for school and just getting into that normal routine. Like I don't have time to be playing games right now, so it makes sense.
What is a hard lesson learned and a soft lesson learned after you started DMing?
DMing or pro DMing?
Pro DMing. Because I don't think they're the same. I think there's just a little bit of difference that makes it, you know.
I would say a hard lesson would be convincing people to pay for it. And then a soft lesson is figuring out like the middle ground to get people to fill the table. So ideas I usually have is first of all, I don't want to have to do the work of recruiting players because then I spend less time actually preparing for the game.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I want to be a paid GM so people will come to me when they're ready. So I try to tell my players, if you find someone, just one person, they can play for free. And usually that fixes the problem immediately because their friend doesn't want to pay for the game because it's too expensive for them, but they're willing to pay because it's just right for them. And so that solves the problem like almost immediately, and that gets you like 3 to 4 players right from the start.
I would say all that, but also being flexible with your time. Like I'm a freelancer, and so my time for the most part is my own. And so I've been over the months like experimenting with what systems people want to play in and also what times they want to play. And so it's only in the past 2 or 3 months that I've started offering 6 a.m. for me games because I realized, oh, right, 9 p.m. on the West Coast is a decent time for people to play games. And so
that's
like
my time.
yeah. And so I'm usually running games, like I'll list 3 sessions a day and then just see what sticks. But I'm constantly shifting what systems I'm running and what one-shots I'm running and things like that. So like I'll have Monster of the Week at 6 a.m. and then my first 5e module in the afternoon, and then Kids on Brooms in the evening. And like I'll move things all around and just see what takes. Because it's also different every single day, too.
Yeah.
I think a hard lesson was, again, to make sure people pay up front. For the way I do things, it's different than Start Play.
Yeah.
Because early on, I had a couple people who just didn't want to pay, you know?
Yeah.
And they went through the whole process. I mean, I spent hours with them building characters, prepping ahead of time. And then it came down to, hey, like, I'm going to be coming tomorrow. Are you going to send a payment? And then just crickets. And I'm like, I just went through all this thing with you. So, you know, that was one of those things where I'm like, you gotta make sure the pay's coming through. And that was a hard lesson. Soft lesson is that paid clients are often, to me, just as fun as stream clients, or not stream, like people you stream with. Because, again, just like the stream, people are dedicated to it. And it just makes me generally only want to run like paid games or stream games. Like that's the only thing I really enjoy running now. Unless it's for like really close friends or family. I generally only run those things because the stories are so much better. That's my soft lesson. Like,
I agree.
Once you
I completely agree with that.
Once you start doing this kind of stuff, like it's so hard to just go back to running just regular home games all the time. Like it's just a different level. It's just a different caliber of players.
It really is. Like
it's a respect.
The example that I can think of is Philippa's Glitter Hearts game. I had an entire character arc for my character in 6 episodes. So they turned into mermaids, like H2O, and she turned into this horrifying creature. Like think of a pelican eel, horrifying maw.
Now that's in my brain. Damn it.
absolutely despised turning into a mermaid. It was like the worst part of her day if she needed to do this thing. And so she was very tentative to go into the water. And by the end, by the final episode, she looked to her friends and said, I'm useless as a human, and jumped into the water. And I got to tell this story of her progression and accepting who she is as a mermaid, because it was this condensed 6-session game with people who were very similarly minded about storytelling.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like with stream and paid clients, because that's generally the people that are willing to pay for this kind of stuff are people who want to tell a good story with their friends.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you just want to go and kill stuff, you're generally like, oh, let's pay somebody so we can go kill a bunch of things. Somebody will just run a scenario for you that. But if you want an actual good story, like, those are the people that, I mean, from my experience, that's who will be willing to pay for a GM service. And it's just, like Scott said, it's a different level of respect, not just for each other, but for what is happening at the table.
Yeah,
and
totally.
I love it. That would be the other like lesson that I've learned. It's just a different caliber of game.
Very nice. Well, we have reached the end of the eve, and I want to make sure that Anya can make it on time to her next game.
It's okay. I have an hour. It's fine. Right. I don't have enough time to take a nap. I will not wake up again. I'm just going to stay up.
Oh my gosh. You're my hero right now.
Oh, I don't feel like it.
For one pro GM to another, the fact that, like, you know, you're like, I forgot to take this down. People signed up. I mean, you could easily say, hey guys, I'm really sorry I can't do this today. But you're like, nope, you signed up. I'm going to stick to it. Mad respect. Mad respect to you.
If it were one player, that would be one thing I would say. You know, this is a very early morning game for me after I'm going to be on stream at 2 in the morning. Would you be okay with moving it to a later day in the week?
Yeah.
For one player, that I would do that. But this guy signed up with 2 of his other friends. So it was 3 people at the table, and we got a 4th person signed up. Yeah. So, of course I'm going to run the game for them. And these are all people who have never played Monster of the Week before. So it'll be exciting to run it for them.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well,
mad respect.
Well, thank you. I want you to have a chance to say who you are, where you can be found, where they can potentially come and hire you. So why don't we go in reverse order? We'll start with you, Salim. We started with Anya in the beginning, so we'll go the other direction.
You can find me on Twitter at Jangowolf, or you can find me on Start Playing as Jangowolf. And yep, feel free to DM me. I'll play any game at almost any time. Just let me know.
Apparently, everybody here will play at any time because they're all night owls and never sleepers.
We do it for the love.
Yeah, right.
All right,
I cannot play Monday through Friday from 8 to 5 because I have a normal job that I work, but in the evenings I'm available, and on the weekends. I am Morgan with Mindflayed Mondays. You can find us at mindflayedmondays.com. You can find me on Twitter at mindflayedmon and everywhere else at Mindflayed Monday. Besides pro DMing, I didn't say this earlier, but I do have a podcast that I've been running for a long time. It's been on hiatus just from certain things, but we have a lot of episodes. So if you want to check that out, you can see kind of how I run things. And beyond that, you can find me on streaming. I'm all over the place sometimes. Sometimes. I love doing charity streams, and I love streaming with Scott. So I'm just happy to be back here for this.
All right, Anya.
Yeah, hi, I'm Anya. I'm Lionne Cosplay almost literally everywhere. If it's a social media account, it's Lionne Cosplay. I am on Start Playing Games at Lionne. And let's see, speaking of charity games, on Friday I'm going to be playing Fiasco on Tavernot's channel. It's a charity stream. I'm also going to be starting my Under the Floorboards Borrowers style 6-part series on Girls Run These Worlds at the beginning of September. It's going to run for 6 weeks, and I'm very excited about it.
There's a system that I bought at Gen Con called Homeworld that is very much like the Borrowers.
Okay.
It's like pixies and stuff living in an old manor home that they've made their own nations.
Ooh.
Pretty cool.
That sounds so cool. Yeah, this one is by Chris Bissett.
Awesome. I am Scott. You can find me everywhere at @ZealZaddy, TikTok at ZealZaddyRPG. This and other this will be on YouTube and Pod sometime next week. So I've got a lot of interviews and story talk shows running on YouTube right now and on podcast. Gen Con was very busy. I interviewed a lot of people, and I'm slowly, as I get through the torture of editing videos, I'm uploading them. I just want to say thank you to all of you. Thank you for the people in chat. It was great to speak to you, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, I want to say one thing.
Go ahead.
I want to say one thing to you, Scott.
Okay.
I love how you're like talking about all the things that you're doing, but earlier you're like, I hate editing. I'm like, man, this is self-inflicted, man.
It is. It is self-inflicted. And I'm in advertising, and I deal with editor. That's probably why I don't like it.
Probably.
All right.
Anyway.
All right.
Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.